If you don't love exercising or it feels like a joyless chore, maybe it's time to stop guilting or shaming yourself to exercise and start training in a different way for a specific purpose because you love discovering what your body is capable of doing. You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 187, Stop Exercising, Part 2. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode. I'm so happy you're here. I hope you're doing so great. Did you stop exercising this week? Was it helpful to you to switch your mindset from exercising to training? I think what we call things matters, like subconsciously. I heard a guy the other day say that he doesn't like doing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen at night. I mean, who does, really? Maybe someone. So he decided not to call it that anymore, and now he says that he's resetting. Pretty cool, right? I just need to take a minute to reset before tomorrow. I love it. I hope that if you haven't loved exercise in the past, or if you've had a hard time getting yourself to do it, that deciding to train instead of exercise is helpful to you. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about training. Keep in mind that I'm not a fitness professional. I don't have a personal training license, and I don't know your unique circumstances. But if you're a little bit newer to training, there are some things that I think it would be good for you to keep in mind as you think through the design of your training program. First and foremost, you need to know what in the world you're training for. Obviously, it helps if there's an upcoming event that you've signed up for. That's a way to get yourself to train and you know exactly what you need to be able to do and when. I have to do a Spartan race as part of my level 2 heroic coach certification, so I'm doing my first one in December. And my 12-year-old knows to ask me, "Okay, Mom, it's Monday. Are we going monkey barring today?" I wouldn't otherwise be dedicated to training monkey bars. I actually still think it's one of the obstacles that I'm going to fail, by the way, but I am trying. So what are you training for? These specific events are good, but what about overall? Whether you have an upcoming event or not. What was that I heard you say? You want to be healthy? You want to be able to participate in various physical activities? You want to be fit? Okay, cool. Next, you want to know why. We always need to know why. And the answer shouldn't be just because that's what everyone says you should want. Who cares what everyone else says you should want? We're not normal here. Do things because they're what you truly want for you. Once you know why you want to be fit, we need to know what fitness even means to you. Different people are going to have different definitions, but I don't think most people have a clear definition of what fitness means to them. They're going through the exercise motions, trying to attain something that they've never even defined. How would they even know whether they got there or not, or whether they were improving? That would be like bowling into a curtain and never seeing if you roll or throw or whatever you do with a bowling ball, if you knocked down any pins. That wouldn't be fun. You'd just be wearing ugly shoes for no reason. Nobody should have to suffer like that. I talked last week about how I love the article, What is Fitness by Greg Glassman. I'll put a link in the show notes again this week, just in case you're interested. This is CrossFit's definition of fitness, and you don't have to love this definition as much as I do, but I would encourage you to think about what your definition is. It's okay if it's different than Greg Glassman's. I would encourage you not to side with Merriam-Webster, however, whose definition of fitness is the ability to transmit genes. I hope we'd all agree that that's not a good enough definition of being fit, for a lot of reasons. Just quickly, CrossFit's definition of fitness is performing well at any and every physical task imaginable, not just being good at one specific physical task. In the article, Greg Glassman says, picture a hopper loaded with an infinite number of physical challenges where no selective mechanism is operative and being asked to perform feats randomly drawn from the hopper. This model suggests that your fitness can be measured by your capacity to perform well at these tasks in relation to other individuals. Nature frequently provides largely unforeseeable challenges. Train for that by striving to keep the training stimulus broad and constantly varied." End quote. I mentioned the 10 general physical skills last week of cardiovascular respiratory endurance, stamina, strength, flexibility, power, speed, coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy. Those are all good markers of fitness, and I would agree that a training program develops fitness to the extent that it improves those 10 physical skills. Developing one and forgetting the other 9 probably isn't enough. You might have a specialty that you're training for, and I think that's awesome. CrossFit's specialty is not specializing, and they argue that combat, survival, and life reward broad fitness and, on average, punish the specialist. I believe that to be true, but that doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't be devoted to training for one thing that you love. You should just be mindful of what other skills you might need to incorporate to meet your own definition of fitness, whatever that is. It's up to you, and it's all just for fun anyway. Hey there, just a quick interruption to say I think the jury's still kind of out on how bad and in what way it's really bad to put aluminum on your skin, but it doesn't seem great, and I figured why not avoid it? Well, because all of the aluminum-free deodorants I ever tried didn't work. Until I tried Lume. This is the first aluminum-free deodorant I ever tried that actually worked. I was instantly converted. Then, over time, I discovered that the answer to my whole family's itchy skin after every shower problem is Lume's acidified body wash. It's awesome, and their acidified body butter keeps our skin soft and hydrated. They even have a laundry product that makes your clothes smell great. I can't say enough good about Lume. Plus, their commercials are hilarious. You should watch one on YouTube if you haven't seen one yet. If you want to give Lume a try, there's a link in the show notes that will give you $5 off your order. My favorite is the pink peony body wash. It smells like washing yourself with bubble gum, which I wouldn't recommend, but I do recommend Lume. Okay, back to the show. I think most of us need to be training for cardiovascular endurance, strength, and flexibility. Power, speed, coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy can and should come along for the ride. And if you have ways to improve those, please do. We talked a little bit about mobility back in episode 61 about preventing injuries and pain. You do need to focus on being able to get into all of your ranges of motion, or you won't be able to get into those positions anymore. And that will limit your ability to experience life. So maintain your flexibility. It takes a little bit of attention, but generally flexibility training is pretty enjoyable. At least I think so. Interestingly, do you know which group of athletes is the most flexible? Okay, no surprise that it's gymnasts, but second most flexible athletes are Olympic weightlifters. Pretty cool. I don't think most people think of weightlifters as being very flexible, but the Olympic weightlifters have to be. I've been focusing on training some of my Olympic lifts more for the last 10 months, and I'm generally pretty bendy. I get that from my grandma Nielsen. When she was in the nursing home with Alzheimer's disease, she didn't know what was going on, but she would yell to the nurses, "Watch this!" And then she'd do the splits. Anyway, I can't do the splits, but I can do a lot of things, and getting down into the bottom of a snatch with a decent amount of weight on the bar is a good challenge. It's been extra satisfying to see the weights go up on my snatch and my clean and jerk. There are parts of my training program that I still can't do with more than about 25 pounds though, because it's a serious tax on my mobility and my balance, which is awesome. I highly recommend it. I think you can pretty easily figure out how to train your mobility. If you want to talk more about it on the podcast, click the link in the show notes and suggest it for a future episode. I'd be happy to do that. I have a program from these Australian brothers that I follow sometimes, and I haven't been doing it as much lately. It's pretty straightforward, but one of the components of aging well is staying flexible. So let's do that, okay? No surprise that we also want to train for cardiovascular endurance. I think most people think of this as being fit. Now we know that there's more to it than just that, but cardiovascular conditioning is a big deal. Like with everything, first you need to decide what's important to you. There are both aerobic and anaerobic cardio conditioning activities. Efforts at high power and lasting less than several minutes are anaerobic, and efforts at low power and lasting in excess of several minutes are aerobic. You can train either or both. Aerobic training benefits cardiovascular function and decreases body fat. This is engaging in low power, extended efforts efficiently. Some people call it LISS or low intensity steady state. I think is what that is. This is endurance or stamina. If that's your goal, you might want to consider following Dr. Philip Maffetone's advice. He's a top-level coach for endurance athletes. He says, quote, "What distinguishes the best endurance athletes from all others is body economy. It's not a theory nor psychology, but our natural birth physiology. It's not genetic, luck, or some special skill gifted at birth. All endurance athletes have the ability to run, bike, ski, row, or swim with higher levels of efficiency, giving us grace and more speed. Improving body economy is the single most important factor that can dramatically improve your sport. Potential for great economy is what we all have in common with the greatest endurance athletes. While most may never get to that level of athleticism because too many roadblocks are in the way, each step we take toward it means more efficiency and a better race. So the goal is to improve body economy by removing the roadblocks that prevent our brains from making the body do what it already knows how to do. First, we must recognize these barriers and then reduce their negative impact on the body or eliminate them altogether." End quote. Phil Maffetone has a particular training regime to increase your body economy using your heart rate as a guide, and he actually has you start out a lot slower than you would want to keep your heart rate lower. And then he keeps your heart rate the same while your speed eventually creeps up. It's pretty interesting. So not focusing on increasing your speed, but on improving your performance in relation to your heart rate. So you become more efficient and able to go further and faster with less effort. Interesting stuff if you're into endurance sports. I'd be interested to hear if you try it or if you have tried it. I've run a couple of half marathons in the past, but the long endurance stuff isn't really my jam. It's taken me a while and some experimentation to figure out what is, and that's okay. Something else to consider is that if you're only training for long endurance events, you're likely to lose muscle mass, strength, speed, and power. Only doing aerobic activities tends to decrease your capacity to do anaerobic activities. Anaerobic cardiovascular conditioning is a little bit superior for fat loss than aerobic, and anaerobic training doesn't decrease your capacity to do aerobic activities. It also improves, rather than reduces, power, speed, strength, and muscle mass. Typically, the way you improve your aerobic cardiovascular fitness via anaerobic activities is by interval training. I'm sure you've probably heard about interval training or high-intensity interval training ad nauseum, and you don't need me yapping about it to you. I want you to do whatever is fun to you and what you're excited about, but do consider at least experimenting with some interval training. The benefits are totally worth the effort, including that it doesn't take as long. I believe what Phil Maffetone says about body economy being important for endurance sports, and his results speak for themselves. He produces the best endurance athletes in the world. I also love the CrossFit approach to fitness and logic about how to develop it. Interestingly, what Greg Glassman says in the CrossFit Journal is, quote, "There are 3 waves of adaptation to endurance training. The first wave is increased maximal oxygen consumption. The second is increased lactate threshold. The third is increased efficiency. In the CrossFit concept, we are interested in maximizing first wave adaptations and procuring the second systematically through multiple modalities, including weight training, and avoiding completely third wave adaptations." End quote. He talks about those body economy or efficiency adaptations decreasing your strength, power, and speed. I still believe both of them, but what you choose to do should be based on what's most fun to you, what you want to stick to, and what you're training to accomplish. Just remember to include cardiovascular stamina training in your training sessions. It's important to your long-term health and ability to be a force in the world for a long time to come, and it helps you create more mitochondria, which we know we love because we want more energy. Figure out what distance or pace or number of rounds or whatever it is that's fun for you to track, and see how you can celebrate and enjoy improving. In her book, The Joy of Movement, Kelly McGonigal says, anything that keeps you moving and increases your heart rate is enough to trigger nature's reward for not giving up. There's no objective measure of performance you must achieve, no pace or distance you need to reach that determines whether you experience an exercise-induced euphoria. You just have to do something that's moderately difficult for you and stick with it for at least 20 minutes. That's because the runner's high isn't a running high, it's a persistence high, end quote. So, you might as well enjoy some exercise-induced euphoria after your training sessions. I think it's fairly easy-ish to figure out a basic cardiovascular training program. Most people can do that themselves, and it's well worth their effort. Training your cardiovascular abilities regularly is kind of like ensuring that you have a steady paycheck coming in. It's a good thing. But strength training is like putting money in the bank. The benefits and dividends are incredible, and it gives you so many more opportunities and the freedom, confidence, and power to be more of who you're meant to be. I am so passionate about you developing strength for a lot of reasons, and I talk a lot about why in episode 53, your sixth vital sign. So go back and listen to that one if you need more reasons to care about your total muscle mass. It's a big deal to your life now and in the future. More than just money in the bank, it's an insurance policy on the functioning of your body. Our muscle mass tends to decrease as we age, and that's a big problem for a lot of people. Everyone has come to accept it as normal. After age 35, you just lose muscle mass. Sarcopenia is a normal part of life. But we're not normal here. Why not increase your muscle mass as you age? You can, and you'd be doing yourself a huge favor. The Knoll Laboratory for Human Performance compared young men and men between ages 45 and 60 and found that percentage of body fat along with aerobic capacity was not related to age, but rather to the amount of time spent training the body. The Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging found muscle growth in people ranging from ages 60 to 96 years old was statistically equivalent to younger people doing the same amount of training with their bodies. So it's not that we can't increase our fitness or muscle mass as we age, or even that it's harder. You might have to play the margins a little bit more, but it's totally doable. Don't let anyone tell you that it's not. If you've never done strength training before, you might need to enlist the help of a good trainer, which can be private or semi-private. My definition of a good trainer might be different than other people's, and I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but I don't think a good trainer would have you use machines or do isolated dumbbell movements. But I'm aware that I am biased. A strength coach is an investment that's well worth it. You want to make sure you're doing things with correct form, which can look a little bit different for everyone, but you need to learn what it feels like to lift correctly, and then you can keep crushing it for the rest of your life. When training for strength, it's important that you don't just go through the motions. This is not a time to zone out. If you don't like that, I get it. I used to think the only way to make exercise fun was to zone out. Way back when I was still exercising rather than training, my favorite thing was the cardio cinema at the old Gold's Gym. It would be cold and dark, and they usually had some pretty good movies going on in there, and I would just do the elliptical machine with no thought whatsoever as I paid attention to Kate Winslet and Jack Black and Cameron Diaz and Jude Law or whatever. Speaking of, did you know that the guy that played Arthur Abbott, who was Kate Winslet's next door neighbor in that movie, The Holiday, was 90 when they filmed the movie, and the director's biggest problem with him as an actor was that he was too energetic, and they had to keep reminding him to slow down and act old. That's so awesome. I just looked him up and he died in 2014 when he was 99. He was married for 66 years. That's pretty good. Okay, back on track. When you're strength training, don't get off track like that. Maintaining focus and intensity is important for strength training. Intensity is a requirement for building muscle. If the intensity is high, a small amount of time training can produce significant muscle gains. I like what Sean Phillips says in his book, Strength for Life. Training at low intensity levels with a high number of reps simply fatigues the muscles and does little to promote muscle development. This is precisely what so many people who come to strength training with an aerobic conditioning mentality mistakenly do. Believing quantity is king and unaware of the all-important quality of intensity, they go about attempting to squeeze a runner's high out of a dumbbell. End quote. Don't try and squeeze a runner's high out of a dumbbell. Don't think that going to fatigue with the number of reps is the sign of a good strength workout, or even being sore afterward, which you probably will be if you do like 3,000 reps. Neither of those things mean you're getting stronger. Panting and sweating don't mean it was a good strength training session either. Don't try to approach strength training from a cardio exercise mindset. It's fine to lift lighter for more reps as part of a cardio conditioning workout. I do that every Wednesday as part of my nondescript conditioning class at Vasa that I talked about last week. But when you're training for strength and muscle power, you want to lift heavy with full focus and intensity and then rest to full recovery after each set. It's not cardio exercise with a dumbbell or barbell in your hand. It's intensity and then rest. It's about generating power and force. Sean Phillips says that the single greatest obstacle to a strong body and mind is a casual, going through the motions approach to exercise. And I think there's some truth to that. Being fully present in the moment inside your body when you're lifting makes it a restorative and nourishing activity, almost like meditation. It's pretty cool. I feel so good when I come home from my strength training exercises, and I think part of it is because it's like a meditative state a little bit for me. It's my me time, but I'm also a huge introvert, so being alone is hugely helpful to me. So that might be part of it, but I do get a little bit of a runner's high from it also. Just as a reference, remember, I'm not a fitness professional, but those who are say that if you're training for strength, you want to lift 2 to 6 reps per set. That's it. Heavy enough that you can't lift it more than 2 to 6 times, and then you rest. I usually rest for like 3 minutes. If you're lifting for hypertrophy, so trying to enlarge the size of your muscle, you do 6 to 12 reps per set. That's if you want to get swole. Then endurance is 12 to 20 reps. Endurance doesn't necessarily build muscle size or strength. So keep that in mind as you build your program or shop through other people's programs. You want to make sure that they promise you a clear result and that what you do matches up with the promised result. Keep your BS detector on at all times and call their bluff if they're promising things that don't make sense. When training for strength, also consider the principles of progressive overload and adaptive capacity. You need to slowly increase the stress to your muscles, and your body miraculously adapts so that it's able to handle more and more stress. And after a few years, you've gone from being able to press 30 pounds over your head to being able to press 130 pounds over your head. And it's seriously so cool. In order to be able to progressively overload, you need to write down and keep track of what you lift and systematically increase that weight slowly over time. I personally follow Jim Wendler's 5-3-1 program with a few tweaks of my own. I'm happy to talk more about it if you have any questions or if it would be beneficial to you in some way. Click the link in the show notes and suggest it for a future topic or send me a message. Mostly you'll increase the number of pounds you lift, but you can also increase number of reps and time under tension, like doing it more slowly to make it harder. We won't get too into the weeds about that right now. Another part of progressive overload is that after you stress your muscles, they need time to recover, at least 36 to 48 hours. The adaptation, aka getting stronger, happens during the recovery. You can jog every day if you really want to, but you cannot lift properly for strength with the same muscles every day. I once heard Amber Brzezinski from Biceps After Babies compare adaptive capacity to tanning, and I thought it made a lot of sense. So, if you decide you want to get a suntan, you obviously can't just go lay out for 7 hours. That exceeds your skin's adaptive capacity. Same with lifting weights. You can't just do it a lot one time. That causes damage, but no growth. But so too, if you decide to lay out for 15 minutes every single day, you'll get a little darker the first few days or week. But will you be incredibly dark by the end of the summer? No, because your skin doesn't adapt to the total accumulation of sun, only to the biggest, most intense exposure. So your skin will stay the same tone as it was after the first week, even though you've done a lot of dedicated and consistent work, because you didn't increase the stress over time. It's the same with the adaptive capacity of lifting weights. In addition to being consistent, you need to increase the stress over time so that you adapt to being able to handle the new increased stress or workload. It makes sense, right? But I think a lot of the reason people go to the gym consistently but don't see the increased strength and muscle mass that they're looking for is because they forget to force their body's adaptive capacity. If you're training for strength, you really need to keep doing the same things repeatedly and keep increasing the workload. So if you're doing a program that's different every week, even if it has dumbbells, you're not training for strength. There are merits to different programs like that, but they're not for strength building. Even if you're sore afterward, you need to do the same lifts and slowly increase the workload, which is generally the number of pounds on the bar, and then properly recover in order for your body to adapt and become able to easily lift that amount of weights again in the future. I'd love to get into which lifts I think you should do as part of your strength training, but in the interest of time, we won't get into that today. I'm a fan of compound movements rather than single muscle isolation lifts, and to do that, you need barbells rather than dumbbells. But you can absolutely increase muscle mass by training with dumbbells or resistance bands, so you do you. And I do use both dumbbells and bands as part of my overall regimen. I hope you fall in love with doing the same lifts repeatedly over time. It's so fun to know exactly what you're going to do and to see your ability increase over time. I do not get people who don't like strength training, but I also do understand that there are people who don't like it. I once heard this lady, Brooke Castillo of the Life Coach School, who makes like $17 million a year teaching people that their thoughts create their feelings, say, "I'm still doing my strength training. I still hate it," or something. And I was like, wow, our thoughts really do create our feelings, because if I made $17 million a year, the first thing I'd want to do is to luxuriate in spending more time lifting and maybe hiring a powerlifting coach, because it's just so fun. Okay, we're getting a little long on time here. To wrap up, we're going to train for mobility or flexibility. We're going to train for cardiovascular capacity, and we're going to train for strength. And we're not going to try to make strength training like cardio. Fewer reps per set at heavier weight and sufficient recovery time between sets. Yes, we're training, not exercising. We're driving a result, not just going through the uninspiring motions so we can check the box. Phil Maffetone says that training is an equation. Training equals workout plus rest. So what we do in the gym only matters if we also get appropriate recovery. That's rest and sleep and calories and protein, maybe stretching and massage and supplements and saunas and cryotherapy and a bunch of other crazy stuff you can add in if you want to recover like Wolverine. This is all just a game and an experiment. Set a goal and reverse engineer the process to see what you need to focus on to make that happen. Try out different things. See what works best for your body and what you enjoy the most. There is a neuroscientific law called Hobbes' law that says that feelings that occur together repeatedly tend to become grafted together. So if you feel confident and powerful when you're training, that feeling gets reinforced with every rep and set. And those feelings of strength become accessible at all times in your life, not just at the gym. Training makes you more confident every day in all areas of your life. In his book, Often Wrong, Never in Doubt, Danny Deutsch says, "It's visceral. There is incredible power in the ability to sit at a table and know, I'm strong. That image of yourself extends to all areas of your professional and personal life. Physical well-being says you're disciplined. You are a winner. End quote. That's what I want for you, to train rather than to exercise so that you're inspired to create a defined result. You enjoy it more. You live with power for many decades to come. And so that you know deep down inside that you are strong. You're ready to handle whatever life throws your way. You are a force to be reckoned with. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today. Next week, we're going to talk about how to make your future problems smaller. Until then, stop exercising and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed